listening to Program Notes for the Florida Orchestra's Huff Family Foundation Masterworks series. I'm Andy Tefelsky, social media manager of the Florida Orchestra, classically trained percussionist, and the host of this podcast. In this episode, I will be talking about Garth Neustadter's Seaborne, Jean Sibelius' The Oceanides, and Claude Debussy's La Mer, so you can dive deeper into the music, anytime, anywhere. These audio program notes are authored by Kurt Loft, a local writer who has written about the arts in the Tampa Bay area for more than 40 years. You can find his full transcriptions at floridaorchestra.org. All right, let's dive in. Garth Neustadter, born 1986, Seaborne, film with orchestra. Performance duration approximately 30 minutes. If visuals drive the messages and entertainment of modern culture, it stands to reason that the Florida Orchestra sometimes presents a marriage of music and imagery, such as its recent video tour of the solar system set to a live performance of Holst's The Planets. A similar experience unfolds in this latest Huff Family Foundation Masterworks program. A sea-related theme opening was Seaborne, a collaboration between composer Garth Neustadter and filmmaker Shel Van Cise. Guest soloists are the Percussion Collective, a group of virtuoso musicians based in Ithaca, New York, who opened the 2023-2024 season with drum circles by Christopher Theophanidis. TFO music director Michael Francis said, quote, "Seaborne is a wonderful piece of music that accompanies a film with great images of the sea set to the music. It features the remarkable Percussion Collective, who play 4 marimbas and piano. It's cast in a modern American language, but it's not difficult to listen to at all, and is very much in the Steve Reich, Philip Glass world," end quote. A sort of documentary without words, the 30-minute piece is scored for percussionists, video projection, and string orchestra, as a musical visual celebration of the planet's endangered oceans and our connection to them. Neustadter notes, quote, "This work explores our perception and perspectives of water from aerial, surface, and underwater vantage points. Water possesses an inherent motion and rhythm, and I'm interested in reflecting the tension between the potential and kinetic energies we observe, as well as our perception of time," end quote. Musically, his language attempts to balance gestures that feel primal or ancient against more modern and familiar textures. The composer added, quote, "Often motifs are introduced in simple ensemble unisons, gradually developing and evolving in ways that might emulate a communal improvisatory experience. Overall, I attempt to create a synergy with the photography, in that our perception of color and light is strongly reflected in the music throughout," end quote. While the surface layer of water is thin, the way in which it interacts with the light and forces of wind and currents makes it the most dynamic and ever-changing natural phenomenon. Vance said, quote, "This piece draws parallels between what the audience hears and sees, combining to become an emotional experience that goes far beyond the music or visuals on their own." Jean Sibelius, 1865 to 1957, The Oceanides, Opus 73. Performance duration approximately 11 minutes. Some composers like Mozart could confidently churn out a string quartet or symphony and ship it off to a publisher without blinking. Others like Sibelius struggled with self-doubt and indecision, to the extreme possibly due to his lifelong dependence on alcohol. Sibelius wrote in 1907, "This boozing, in itself an exceptionally pleasant occupation, has really gone too far. My drinking has genuine roots that are both dangerous and go deep." Although he composed prolifically until retiring in 1929, 3 decades before his death, Sibelius often wavered on the final version of a piece. An example is The Oceanides, a tone poem the finicky composer continued to tweak and rename after his first sketches in 1913. He set pen to paper on a $1,000 commission from 2 American patrons, who also paid for Sibelius to travel to Connecticut to conduct the premiere. But the composer continued to add and delete ideas even after he mailed the score overseas. He wrote, "Isn't it just like me to rework the tone poem? At the moment, I am ablaze with it." The Oceanides is regarded as a masterpiece of Impressionism and ranks alongside Debussy's La Mer, which closes this program. Cast in 3 sections, it describes playful nymphs in a calm ocean, a storm, and the dramatic swelling and surging of waves before the vast sea again turns tranquil. After its premiere, the critic Olin Downs described the new piece as, quote, the finest evocation of the sea that has ever been produced in music. Sibelius holds himself closer to the coastline of tonality than does Debussy, and suggests a picture of limitless and eternal power, end quote. Claude Debussy, 1862 to 1918, La Mer. Performance duration approximately 23 minutes. Despite his short stature, Debussy was a towering figure in the world of music, the creator of an original soundscape that challenged tradition and sparked a new modernism. He was a master of suggestion in music, dissolving rigid conventions into endlessly shifting contours of harmony, texture, and color. After the 1894 premiere of Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, music could no longer look back, as the composer Pierre Boulez later remarked. The art of music began to beat with a new pulse. Debussy was first labeled an impressionist in 1887, and as much as he disliked being associated with the movement and visual art, he never shed the stereotype. In 1909, he wrote to his publisher, "I'm attempting something different. Reality is in some sense what imbeciles call impressionism, just about the least appropriate term possible." In La Mer, Debussy pays tribute to the sea in a lavish 3-movement masterpiece that demands every ounce of nuance from an orchestra. Throughout this music, chords seem to float effortlessly on their own, free of any tonal anchor. Harmony and structure don't progress in the traditional sense but become emotional states in themselves, a collage of light and shadow. Debussy described the 3 sections not as movements but symphonic sketches that suggest the spirit of the ocean. The triptych includes From Dawn Until Noon. As the morning begins and the sea awakens, sunlight scatters across its surface and tides shift the great mass of water. Debussy's friend, the composer Erik Satie, teasingly said he liked the little bit between 10:30 and 11:15. Play of the waves. The music emerges weightless, then depicts wind-driven currents and waves in a crescendo of perpetual motion. Dialogue of the wind and sea. The final section brings a thunderstorm above the sea as rain, lightning, and wind join as one formidable force of nature. The work ends with a resounding timpani stroke. Describing La Mer in words has always been tricky for musicians, critics, and annotators. No wonder when RCA Victor released a recording with Conductor in the 1950s, they decided to forego the usual analytic liner notes. Instead, they printed an essay by someone who knew nothing about music but a great deal about the sea, Rachel Carson, the American marine biologist and author of Silent Spring. This season, we wanted to give you a few key things to listen for in each Masterworks program. Here's what to keep an ear out for in this program. In Garth Neustadter's Seaborne, film with orchestra, note how the composer and cinematographer create impressions of the ocean from 3 perspectives: above the ocean, at the surface of the ocean, and underwater. Jean Sibelius' The Oceanides. Note how Sibelius uses the colors of the orchestra, especially woodwind and harp, to paint the impressions of a constantly changing sea. Claude Debussy's La Mer. This remarkable set of images doesn't depict the sea in a literal sense, but through an interplay of light, shadow, and sheer orchestral force. Thank you for listening to Sound Waves with the Florida Orchestra. Enjoy the concert.